In Zimbabwe, 12% of unmarried adolescents and young girls have an unmet need of contraception because of various reasons. And join us today as we tackle the policy framework on access to sexual and reproductive health with the Legal Resource Foundation as we get to unpack on the policies that are there in Zimbabwe. And this is Young and Health Talk Show, where we tackle everything concerning the sexual and reproductive health rights of the young people in and around Zimbabwe. So don't you forget to follow us. I am Vesli Mempo. Welcome to Young and Health.
Thank you for having me here.
Oh yeah, I'm very privileged to be joined by a legal expert. So would you care to just introduce yourself?
Okay, hello viewers. My name is Sharon Moffat. I'm a lawyer with Legal Resources Foundation Zimbabwe, based in Masvingo.
Oh, nice meeting you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're talking on the policy framework on access to sexual and reproductive services. So, firstly, we would want to know what is a policy.
Okay, usually a policy is a rule or a principle that guides decisions resulting in positive outcomes. Like I would like to just give an example. Okay. Like our government of Zimbabwe has various policies on various areas, which usually guide how decisions are made, especially when it comes to children and young adults.
Oh, so it's like a guide.
Yes.
Oh, okay, interesting. So in terms of sexual and reproductive health, what is a policy? Okay, what's the importance of a policy when it comes to SRHR?
Okay, sexual, reproductive, and health rights are very important because they are key to our survival. So there are various laws and policies that guide and how, when we encounter issues related to sexual, reproductive, and health rights, how we are going to deal with it, depending on various scenarios. I think this is going to be one point of our discussion.
Oh yeah, it is. So just looking at the policies that are the probably to just have a light on what is a policy framework when it comes to sexual and reproductive health. What are the policies that are there when it comes to SRHR and pertaining to young people?
Okay, when we look at our policies here in Zimbabwe, the starting point is our constitution, the Constitution of Zimbabwe, which is the supreme law of Zimbabwe. Under Section 76 of our constitution, it talks about the right of people having access to health rights, yes, including sexual and reproductive health rights. Oh. So this is our starting point when we have this policy discussion related to SRHR. Okay. So it is clearly articulated in that section under the Constitution that people should have access to sexual, reproductive, and health rights. And this includes children and young persons as well.
Okay, nice. Okay, so you have mentioned about the section that allows everyone to have access to health rights, including sexual and reproductive health rights. But then now looking at Section 35, where there's an age restriction to where a young person can access sexual and reproductive health rights when they're 18. What's your take on that?
Okay, when we look at our Public Health Act, especially the section you have alluded to, Section 35, it talks about consent of user, that everyone who wants to access sexual, reproductive, and health services must have consented to that. But at the same time, we have what we define as children as in terms of our act, which says children is every person who is under the age of 18. And when children are doing certain acts, they need consent from their guardians or parents as well. That is our law says. So when we come back to Section 35, it now make reference to that, to that fact that when we are dealing with children, we now need the consent of their parents or guardians to make certain decisions. So now that's where the challenge is coming out. Yeah. We all know that although we have certain age restriction when it comes to sexual intercourse and so forth, like right now our law says a person aged 16 years and above can have sex legally, although there was a recent constitutional judgment which said maybe there's a need to relook to align our laws of sexual consent, the same age of allowing parties to enter into marriages, which is now 18 years. So, but at the same time, when we look now at our law, it's in particular Section 35 of the Public Health Act, it says you need consent to access certain services as well. But at the same time, you are saying a 16-year-old can indulge in sex. Then furthermore, if you look at our law, if children below the age of 16 engage into sexual intercourse,
they do.
there is no criminalization of that offense because they are both children and they are both under 16.
Yeah.
So we cannot run away from biology and science.
We cannot.
Children will always indulge
Yes.
into sexual intercourse. So they are saying now we need consent of the guardians. I know there were some public hearings which occurred a couple of years ago where parents were consulted on whether to allow our children to access sexual reproductive health rights services without the assistance of their parents or guardians. But I think that was shut down because parents said, no, we still need to be there to assist our children to make that kind of decisions. But for me, I think Section 35 does not bode well with the reality on the ground.
Yes,
because children will keep on indulging in sexual intercourse. And unfortunately, sometimes they will end up getting diseases which may have been preventable if they were allowed to access sexual reproductive health rights services without the consent of their parents. And at the same time, this may end up in having an increase in numbers of unwanted pregnancies.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I remember during the time of COVID, during lockdowns, lots of teenage pregnancies that were reported by our government. So all these things point out to the fact that we really need to have a serious conversation, a real look at their current laws, especially in relation to access to sexual, reproductive and health rights services by children and adolescents as well.
That's very important. So just looking at the unmet need for contraception, there are a lot of reasons why young people need sexual and reproductive health services. And some point, consent is something that young people are not comfortable with. So just you have tackled some of the gaps in the legal aspect when it comes to sexual and reproductive health policies. Are there any other gaps that you think that probably this needs to be tackled in order to better the situation?
Okay, all the point that I was highlighting in my previous conversation, I think it only speaks to that as parents and legislators, especially parliamentarians, we just need to sit down and come up with policies and laws that really recognize the reality on the ground. We cannot run away from the fact that children will indulge into early sexual intercourse. It's very unfortunate, although we try by all means to educate them that they need to wait for the right time. But we cannot run away from that fact. So our laws and policies must speak to the reality on the ground.
Yes.
Because if we do not do that, we will end up with high rates of unwanted pregnancies, STIs spreading faster, because children or young persons would have limited access to sexual, reproductive and health services. So we really need to have that serious conversation once again, and parents must really appreciate that we cannot escape biology at the end of the day.
We cannot.
Yes, we cannot escape biology. So people just need to accept the reality on the ground, and our laws and policies must speak to that fact. I know there are very many good policies which speak to maternal health rights, and so forth. But we cannot ignore the rights of children as well. When we look at children's rights, they talk about children must participate in decisions that affect them. We need even to speak to children directly and get their point of view.
What do
they really want as well? So we cannot really ignore them. Because even when you look at children's rights, Zimbabwe is a signatory to many international conventions, like the Convention of the Rights of the Child, the African Charter on the Welfare of Children. Yes, all those conventions, they all speak to that children must participate in decisions that affect them.
Yes.
So we cannot ignore that fact. So we also need to involve children when we are having discussions which affect their future. So maybe we'll get a different perspective when we include children in the discussions as well.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, we'll go around in circles and we'll see more increase in numbers of unwanted pregnancies, children exposing themselves to dangers and so forth. So we really need to have a serious conversation and including children in that conversation as well.
Yeah, that's a food for thought. So, we really need to have children here, parents here, and the legal experts here. We really need to have this conversation. I'm pretty sure there'll be like a bit of commotion because everyone has their thoughts and their feelings when it comes to accessing sexual and reproductive health services when it comes to young people. Okay, so just to round up a bit, what do you think? You have mentioned the engagement part. What else can government and CSOs do in order to stimulate these conversations on SRHR policies?
Okay, I think as government and CSOs, we should keep up with new trends that are coming out from our everyday lives. Now, I remember 20 years ago, we would not talk about certain things such as like WhatsApp and so forth, and children participating. But we really need to keep up with the trends. We really need to acknowledge that things are ever changing, and we must keep up with all those changes as well. As CSOs, we must continue complementing government efforts, especially in relation to when it comes to children accessing sexual, reproductive, and health services. Yeah. So we must keep the conversation going on and acknowledge that there are certain gaps in our laws and policies that really needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. Because if we do not have those serious conversations, I'm afraid that sometimes we might have lost generations in the future. Yes. Remember, our children are the future.
Yes.
And we really need to protect them from any danger that may come their way. So we really need also maybe a bit of harmonization of our laws. Okay. Because we have different laws which speak to the rights of children. Yes, sometimes there might be conflicting provisions, so they must really speak the same language. Yes, we eliminate such conflicts as well. And I'll just repeat again, we must involve children in the conversation. We must not leave them behind in this conversation as well. And we continue educating them on their rights and also how they can participate meaningfully in developing policies and laws that affect their sexual, reproductive, and health rights as well.
So there you have it. There's a lot of work to be done when it comes to policy framework in terms of sexual and reproductive health services. And also, there's a lot of engagements to be done with parents and children in order to get a clear vision of what young people want and what the parents want, and we can have a way forward in crafting meaningful policies when it comes to sexual and reproductive health in order to cap this unmet need for contraception when it comes to unmarried adolescents and young people. Thank you. Do not forget to follow us on our social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook at 263U TV. Every Wednesday at 10 a.m. we give you the best show. Don't you ever forget that. I am Vesli. It's a bye for now.